So hey, what's up guys, welcome back to channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto went back in time with Tsunade to settle down. This is part 1, and if you want more then please leave a like, share and subscribe. Let's get in the video. Before that make sure to drink a glass of water. Let's start the video. It was all over. The remains of the final battle with Akatsuki could be seen for miles around within the borders of the Land of Fire. Craters littered the devastated landscape, occasionally occupied by the corpses of those unfortunate enough to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. However, this is not where the end begins. Several miles from the border was a cave. Inside lay the nearly dead remains of the Konoha 12, minus Naruto and Sasuke, plus Yamato, Konan, Shizune, Gaara and Kakashi. Sasuke and most of his team had disappeared in the middle of the battle while fighting Team 10 when a tsunami summoned by Kisame missed his target and slammed into the area. Their bodies lay sprawled around the cavern as they were held down by root forces, unable to take their eyes off of the horror that was occurring in front of them. The giant, nine-eyed head gazed blankly into space, its ringed hands cupped as if holding something precious. It was a monstrous revenant, stuck half risen from the grave. 5 shadowed figures stood on top the fingers, each grinning, exulting in their imminent victory. Suigetsu, Kisame, Zetsu, Dan's man Madara were busy focusing their chakra as a heroic orange-clad idiot/demon container was slowly losing that last title. Each member looked as if they had been put through a blender, their clothes somehow holding together and their bodies in little better shape, but their smirks counteracted what their bodies presented. The final battle was initially a stalemate, going in favor of the Konoha forces due to Kisame's initial screw-up, but Dan's meant his loyal root forces switched sides on the last second, much to everyone's surprise. The man was notorious for being underhanded, but Konoha's forces didn't expect their newly elected Hokage to betray his own forces at the last moment. Needless to say, tempers were high and morale was low. This is where the story begins and ends. As he floated in the middle of what he would describe as the most boring place in the universe, next to Iruka's classes, only one thought was going through Naruto's mind. Was this what Gaara went through? 3 days of this is torture, let alone 5. No wonder he died. I mean, sure, the guy is as strong and awesome as me, but honestly, this place is driving me nuts. After about 2 days into the extraction process, Naruto was taking a break from trying to get out of whatever the hell he was in. Sure, he was captured, about to die, and on the verge of a tyrannical new world order, but he dealt with his panic and depression 21 hours ago due to one of his unspoken promises to himself to never go down the path of the emo. He had seen what it did to Sasuke, and he did not want that to happen to him. He was about to attempt to try Sage Mode yet again and try to blow something, if there was anything at all, up, whether it was to see if it would work or simply because blowing things up is fun as hell is anyone's guess, when he felt a huge presence come from right behind him. Whipping around, he turned just in time to see a huge black tear in the middle of, well, whatever this place was made of, rip open. A man tumbled out with no grace whatsoever and landed flat on his back with a painful moan. Now, Naruto is not the definition of a genius. Yes, he does have a mask to hide his true skills, and yes, he's not that stupid, although his social skills are indeed what people think they are, but he was pretty damn sure that whatever Akatsuki was doing to him, it did not involve some random guy falling through a tear in the air. Staring at the man, Naruto took in his appearance. He was in his late teens to early 20s, a bit less than 2 meters tall, give or take, with long brown black hair tied in a semi-low ponytail that reached down to a few inches past his waist. His eyes were hidden by a pair of expensive-looking sunglasses, but even without seeing his eyes, one could tell that his face was handsome with high cheekbones, a tight jawline, long bangs that spiked a little, and little baby fat. He wore a pair of loose tan cargo pants with many pockets that appeared to hold some various-sized objects, and a brown leather belt to hold it up, a white t-shirt that had a black tribal design in the chest that could easily remind someone of a fancy spinning bull's eye or windmill. A black trench coat with a hood and short sleeves that extended down to just above his ankles, with the silver outline of a fire flaring from the hem up to his kneecaps, tan steel-toed boots, and black fingerless gloves that padded the fingers. Naruto stared as the man slowly picked himself up, swaying dangerously during the process. Even though he wouldn't admit it, the guy looked pretty cool from a teenager's perspective, like something a person would expect from a manga, minus the swing of course. Suddenly, the man stumbled, hurling what looked like his lunch as the smell of alcohol and quite a bit of vomit washed over Naruto. Ugh, damn midget. Can't take one damn joke about her non-existent weight without trying to kill me. Hope Crypt will live through the rampage and not vow revenge on me this time, though odds are he'll just mix me up with the floor again by the end of the day and blame it instead. Crazy bastard. He chuckled to himself, getting an odd look from the blonde. Now where the hell? Interesting. Not even turning to face Naruto, but still swaying rather dangerously side to side, the man continued, "Kid, you wouldn't happen to be Naruto Uzumaki, would you?" Naruto, still trying to get the smell of booze and vomit out of his system, stumbled back a few steps, pointed at the unknown man in a rather extravagant way and shouted. This was definitely an improvement compared to 10 minutes beforehand, but the boy still wasn't going to take any chances just yet. Who the hell are you, how the fuck did you get here and how do you know my name? The man simply turned to face the boy, seemingly making eye contact with the 16-year-old, and stared for what seemed like a good hour. Then he started to laugh and yelled to himself. A lot. Ahahahahaha. Holy crap. We spend years trying to find this universe, and I accidentally stumble into it completely hammered by accident running from my Pumsing sister. Hahahahaha. The guys are going to laugh their asses off. Oh man, this is too good to pass up. They don't even know yet. This is too rich. Naruto, slowly inching away from the crazy person in front of him, turned around and started to run float as far away as possible, only to have said crazy person suddenly appear next to him with his arm around his shoulder and still hold on, kid. As much as I enjoy freaking strangers out and believe me, I enjoy it very, very much. I gotta ask you, where the hell are we? From what I can tell this is some sort of mental realm that's meant to keep consciousnesses in limbo for a while. He paused. Now that I think about it, I normally have trouble getting into places like these weird. Anyways, you can tell me about the Kikbi and shit like that. I know it all, or mostly about it, and I can tell you that it doesn't bug me at all. Hell, my sister has a dragon inside her that hawks Lugi's the size of the land of fire, and I chat to her all the time. Course, it doesn't help that I piss her off for fun half the time, but that's something completely different. Naruto couldn't really respond to what this guy asked. Out of nowhere, a complete stranger appears, claiming to be looking for his universe for over 1,000 years, knowing his name, and then asking what is happening while they were both in his mind, while the Kikbi was being sucked out of him. Not only that, but this stranger claimed that said Kikbi was pretty much no big deal, and seemed to think that talking to monsters that would make the greatest monster in the 5 elemental countries look insignificant was an everyday occurrence. Naruto was starting to think that he was going crazy. Turning away from the man, Naruto muttered, I've been here too long and I'm seeing things, gotta get out before the Kikbi gets taken out of me and save everyone. He made it almost 2 feet before a firm hand grabbed his shoulder and yanked him back. The man glared at Naruto, or seemed to, and Naruto felt something that caused him to fear this man. His presence, his intent, it was strong. Far too strong. Whatever he might look like, he wasn't human. Care to repeat that, kid? What do you mean, before the Kikbi gets taken out? What happened? Naruto could tell this was not a question, it was an order. So, he did what any person who could think straight and valued his life would do. He explained everything. Danzum's rise to Hokage, Sasuke's kill on side order, the first encounter with Sasuke, where he managed to escape vowing revenge on all of Konoha, knowing that it was a hole in the ground, the news of the entirety of Akatsuki bearing down on Konoha, the last battle, and Danzum's last-second betrayal. All throughout the explanation, the stranger listened carefully, not interrupting Naruto's explanation, although he did mutter something along the lines of damn, and I thought Kishi's plotline was bad. When the explanation was done, the man simply stood up and stared off into space in deep though, occasionally talking to himself. Naruto could only hear bits and pieces of what he said. But tell them that he's the hurt like a damn pain in information they could provide to be. After what seemed like an eternity, Naruto, who had been staring at the man in fear and wonder, finally lost his patience and snapped. That's it. Who the hell are you and how do you know so much about me? You better fess up before I kick your ass, you bastard. Z. The stranger, still looking like he was thinking, tilted his head to the side and a large snot bubble blew from his nose. All while standing completely erect. What the hell? Naruto roared, his head almost as large as Iruka's when someone screwed up in class. Wa? Oh, were you saying something? The man grumbled as the snot bubble popped. Clawing onto what restraint he had left, Naruto replied. Who the fuck are you? And how do you know me? Oh, why didn't you ask earlier? At this point, Naruto vowed to kill this man, however strong he might be. My name is well I have a lot of names and nicknames, but for now call me Ghost. It's the one I use the most. As for how I know so much about you we'll talk about that later. He waved his hand lazily. Before Naruto snapped and lunged for Ghost's neck, the odd man continued. Just to let you know, you're going to die and it's impossible for you to get out of your current situation. If you stay like this, the Kikbi will be extracted from your body, you will die, your friends will die, and the elemental countries will fall into chaos. If someone stops the ceremony that Akatsuki are putting you through, the Kikbi's chakra will rush back to you in a massive surge and cause an explosion that will kill everyone in Abuo out a 5-mile radius. He crossed his arms and nodded his head sagely, as if he had come to a conclusion that didn't affect him or the world in the slightest. Yep. No ifs, ands or buts about it. You were hosed this time around, kid. This stopped Naruto in his tracks. A multitude of emotions ran through his mind as Ghost explained what would happen, and throughout the entire thing, Naruto could tell. Ghost wasn't lying. That can't be true. He yelled in denial. My friends. My teammates. My teachers. You mean to tell me that all that fighting was for nothing? Down on his knees, the blonde hero sank into depression, or was about to when the guest yanked him back up and slapped him in the face with practiced ease. Hold on there, Mr. Almost Emo, I said you were hosed this time around. I happen to have some powers other than traveling between dimensions and worlds completely intoxicated, thank you very much. One of which would be quite helpful to you right about now. If you're interested. He gave the boy a confident smirk that reminded the blonde of himself whenever he came up with an awesome strategy or technique. Naruto looked at the dimension traveler skeptically, what, like time travel? In a more than sarcastic tone. The man made a funny sound as he waved one of his hands from side to side. No, not quite, but it's close enough that it can kind of be considered time oh god. Ghost stumbled to the side and threw up with a passion. Naruto managed to jump away in time to not get covered in it, but he could do nothing to get away from the smell. Coughing, Ghost righted himself again and groaned. Ugh. If you ever meet my brother Crypt, which is more than likely, never under any circumstances eat or drink anything he offers you. It is more than likely going to go out the hole it came in, and it gets more disturbing and painful if you try to be creative about it. Why would I want to be creative about it? As I was saying, I can do something that is like time travel, but not really. I'll explain later, but for now it would be enough to say it's a one-way trip and it only goes backward. For now, you will be the only one to remember what has happened afterwards, but I can make it so that you can make some people remember later. There will be rules though, and I expect you to follow my orders when I give them to you, since this isn't my first time doing this, and I can make sure you don't do anything stupid. Screwing around with the past is unpredictable, and things don't always happen the same way, even if you try to repeat everything perfectly. If you do go through with this, I will train you. I don't know any jutsu yet, but I am a wind air element like you, and I happen to know a thing or two about you and what you can do to get better. I'll even throw in a few tricks as well, at the cost of your dignity and personal safety, of course, mostly dignity. Honestly, it's so overrated in my opinion. I can also if needed get some of my family to come over to help from time to time with training you and your friends if needed. Oh fuck, they will kill me when they find out I found this universe and didn't tell them, and a couple of them can help you with your inner furry. Boy. Naruto growled. The boy had been called many things when it came to the Kikbi, but he drew the line at being insinuated that he had a fur fetish. Ghost giggled. Sorry, couldn't resist. Too easy. Anyways, you in or out? Naruto, taking all this and stared at the man, who claimed to be able to turn back time. After 10 minutes of deliberation, he replied. What's the catch? There's no way you would do all this for free. I don't even know if I can trust you. What do you want, Ghost? Ghost smirked. Entertainment, kid. Despite my damn sexy looks, I'm roughly 2,500 years old, give or take a couple hundred, and the same goes for everyone in my immediate family. We get bored real fast and like shaking things up a bit wherever we go. But more than that, we like helping the good guy completely one-side the assholes on the opposing team and make them look like pansies. As long as the good guy isn't a complete prick, of course. Then we just torture him and the bad guys as a mysterious third party, which is also pretty fun from time to time. Anyways, have you ever seen an embodiment of death and destruction have a panic attack and freak out because all his plans keep on mysteriously backfiring? It's fucking hilarious. The fact that your world has a pale-ass snake pedophile to mess with is even better. The man rubbed his hands evilly as he began to plan out the things he would do to Orochimaru, giggling like a child the entire time. Oh, it will be glorious. Moving on. The thing is, after about a couple hundred years, most sentient beings that achieve immortality either go completely insane, achieve omnipotence and cease to be a single being anymore, or become partially insane to maintain a good portion of their sanity. Sanity to power ratios are quite variable, though, so some lose more sanity than others. The way most of my family stays more or less sane is by screwing around with people's heads like a genius chipmunk on crack and Red Bull. What are crack and Red Bull? Naruto thought as he let the man continue. He was reluctant to admit it, but he was starting to like the guy. Anyone who enjoyed messing with the heads of people that deserved it earned points in his book. I promise you that I won't change anything major unless it's for the better. Hell, I'll even make it so that you get that Haika chick and not get in trouble with the councils for it. Girl has a figure to kill for, and it was obvious that she has the hots for you. How you completely missed her painfully obvious crush I'll never understand. As for trusting me, well, it's either we do this or everyone is dead, so it's not like you have a lot of options. This isn't the first time I've fixed a timeline. Ghost paused. Oh yeah, I also like Raymond with a passion, that's worth a few points, right? So once again, are you in or out? Ghost was reading the boy's emotions through his face. Understanding, skepticism, humor, mischievous, rage, Hinata-fueled, of course, and hope. He knew he had the kid and could only laugh maniacally to himself as he planned all the things he was going to do too well, everyone. Being indiscriminate had its perks. These pranks can I join? Naruto asked slowly, with a small grin on his face. Naruto, my dear boy, with your clones, I dare say we might break my family's current record for most pranks in a week. Ghost claimed with vigor. Oh yeah, the kid is in. Fine, I'll bite. The Jinchuriki sighed. So what are these rules? And what are you going to teach me, and? Ghost raised his hands in mock defense. Whoa. Hold on there, one at a time. What I'll teach you will come when I teach you. Rules come first. If I tell you to do something, you do it. Most of the time I leave shit alone and do nothing aside from messing with people, which will happen, a lot, but there will be times when I do act or need you to do something, and you will do it. Second, the memory transfer. Because of my power, you will be given chains that will look like a link tattoo on your body. Most likely, it'll show up on your arm. Each link will restore one person's memory from before I change everything, that'll make more sense later. The number of links you get will depend on the number of times you've died or came so close to death that it didn't really matter at that point. He leaned forward and seemed to stare at Naruto for a few seconds before nodding to himself and backing up. From what I can tell, you died 5 times, once from that guy Kabuto during that fight with Tsunade, twice when you fought Sasuke at the valley, once when you saved that chick Shion. There was some really interesting space-time manipulation surrounding that one, and the last one is right now. Yes, you're close enough to being dead that it counts. He started to stretch his body out before continuing. To bring someone's memory back, bring out a chain link by focusing on your tattoo and imagining a link appearing. Once you have a link solidified, simply apply it to the person's forehead and wait as they deal with a massive headache as their memories return. Probably take about an hour, less if they've been dead for a while. Now listen closely, cause this is the interesting part. If you bring back the memory of a person who died or almost died during the time period I erased, meaning between now and when you wake up after I do my thing, they will develop a chain link of their own, which they can either keep or give back to you. So if you plan it out correctly, you can bring more than 5 people back. He grunted as he started to twist his body and spin smoothly on his hands, causing his spine to snap several times. Naruto was seriously starting to question his decision to work with the guy at this point. Third rule, change as little as possible unless you truly believe that it is for the best outcome. I cannot stress this enough. What you know is absolutely useless if it doesn't happen in the first place. That means don't try to pick up Hinata the first time you see her, don't try to be Sasuke's best friend right off the bat, don't scream about Orochimaru's plan to invade Konoha to the entire village, and for God's sake, don't start showing off in front of your friends and beat everyone. Take your time and be subtle. To their childhood counterparts, you're still the same dead last idiot. Don't give them any reason to think otherwise except for maybe Shikamaru, but he's damn smart, so it'd be best to bring his memory back from the get-go. Regardless, the timeline will change more the longer we stay there, so technically as long as we don't do anything too drastic or stupid, we should be able to have a bit of breathing room once the Chunin exams start getting close. He sighed as he landed on his feet and stood up again with loose and relaxed posture. As for how I know so much, well, that's for me to know and for you to find out later. Maybe. Now, are we done? Cause I want to get this over with. He momentarily frowned as he took in a deep breath. I don't really like using this particular ability, kid. It brings back some unwanted memories. I'm doing you a damn big favor by using this power for you, so be grateful. Naruto, eager to see how this guy was going to turn back time and save everyone, nodded. Yeah. I can't believe that I'm getting a second chance. I'm not going to waste it. Ghost smirked, then back up whiskers, because you're about to see a legend in action. I've been called several interesting things during my travels, and I can assure you, none were earned simply because they sound as awesome as I am. Before Naruto could ask what he meant, he felt it. Something that made killing intent seem like child's play. It was something on a completely different level. Mere killing intent made a person feel like they were covered by a very cold blanket on his bare skin. The heavier the intent, the colder and heavier the blanket was. The intent of the strongest shinobi could freeze a man in place and in some cases cause them to pass out because they stopped breathing. This presence was completely different on a fundamental scale. It was like standing on a tiny platform that would fit only half of one of your feet, and around you there was absolutely nothing. No ground, no walls, no sky. Not even air. Just infinite emptiness. And from the infinite depths of this space, a strong wind rose, buffeting the platform unceasingly, making it unbearably easy for a person to lose their balance and fall into an eternal pit of nothing. Naruto could only gasp for air and stay perfectly still in fear of losing himself to this horrifying sensation. And then he noticed Ghost. At first, the strange man's only change was his confident grin, which some could say resembled a certain fox's at times. But then two huge snow-white lumps unfurled from his back as a pair of wings made their appearance. Bones, stripped clean. No feathers, no skin, no muscle, just two white wings clawing from his back and surrounded his sides, like a majestic zombie falcon. But the oppressive feeling he was giving off continued to intensify. Naruto would be the first person in Konoha to tell you that fighting monsters is no laughing matter, but there's always a way to deal with them. With Gaara and Shukaku, the Akatsuki, and the Kyuubi under his belt, one would think that he could handle being in the presence of anything. This next transformation of ghosts proved him wrong. As soon as his wings extended to their full length, black fire no, black would be an insult to how dark this fire was, an abyss-like flame erupted from between the fingers of the wings, forming membranes of utter darkness. As this was happening, the bones themselves seemed to become transparent as the flames outlined them, giving both wings a ghostly, grasping look. The last and in Naruto's opinion, creepiest change was on Ghost's face. While the flames slowly made their appearance, black shards slowly phased in from nowhere and attached themselves to his face, eventually becoming a black mask formed around his glasses, so dark that even his fire looked paler beside it. It reminded Naruto of Haku's mask in its simplicity, but instead of wave marks, there was a shattered glass design originating from Ghost's left eye, pure white cracks reaching out to the edges of the mask. The result was the man had transformed from a goofy-looking drunk to something that could only be described as a god deity-like being, something that he was sure that even Madara wouldn't think twice about running away from. The transformed man said nothing. He simply raised his right arm lazily to his side, as if giving an order. Then the chains came. Thousands, millions, an uncountable amount of chains appeared out of thin air and extended everywhere, reminding the blonde of a spider's web or one of Sasuke's ninja wire traps. Naruto guessed that there were so many chains that they wrapped around the world. When the links finally stopped moving, obscuring the ground in every direction farther than any eye could see, each and every chain flashed into a black falchion-style sword, roughly 3 feet long from the handle, but with the blade's edge extending over the entirety of the grip and the guard on the back of the blade, looped forward up a good third of the blade, similar to a chit. Each one was an exact replica of the one next to it, and all looked very lethal. Think God of War, Blades of Chaos, with a few tweaks, and the blade is half as wide. Naruto could tell, somehow, as the blades rose partway from the ground and began to dance with the abyssal flames floating about, that these were not really swords dancing around him like death. This was much more frightening. This was death, given physical form, dancing around him like swords. As the boy realized this, the swords closest to Ghost erupted in his black fire. The fire jumped from blade to blade faster than the eye could see, traveling at an insane pace down the near-infinite trail of sharp weapons, occasionally disappearing in one direction and reappearing on a completely different line of blades. As the last weapon caught on fire, the world itself caught alight with a tremendous explosion, burning with abyssal flame. Before everything went dark, Naruto thought, holy shit. What the hell did I get myself into this time? In the depths of Naruto's mind, the remains of a certain demon were contemplating something different. I knew my container was lucky at times, but to by chance get their help at the last moment is something else. To think that they actually exist, let's see where this leads. Even when you aren't here, your existence changes all the rules. Don't disappoint me, envoy of Suzushi. Naruto awoke in a room too large for his own comfort. Pictures of Ramen littered the walls, and a target board with the face of a certain Uchiha stuck on it was mounted on the back of the door. The floor was littered with the trademark orange jumpsuits that he was known for, and the bed he was on had more than enough lumps to feel uncomfortable. The only thing that registered with Naruto was that he was back. Elated that he was back in a time where Konoha wasn't a hole in the ground and where the old man was still alive, Naruto cheered at the top of his lungs. Oh yeah. I'm back, baby. Woohoo. Of course, that was when the cold hand of reality bitch slapped our foxy hero upside the head. Shut up, you damn demon. No one cares about you. Some people are trying to sleep. Yes, Naruto was back. Back before he won anyone's respect. Back before anyone truly saw him for him and not for the demon. No friends, no Kakashi, no Jiraiya, no acknowledgement, nothing. Sucks, doesn't it? All that hard work and no one remembers a damn thing. Snapping out of his stupor, Naruto swung his head around, where the black and white clad immortal was lounging on the floor with his hands behind his head, seemingly staring at the ceiling. Don't think it's over yet. There's still something else that you have to deal with before you start to try to change the world for the better. Ghost said with an unsettling smile. Ah, I love this part. Everyone that goes through this gets so pissed when they realize what they have to do first. Such vocabulary coming out of mouths so young. It just brightens my day. Naruto, irritated that one of the first things that he has to deal with is Ghost, flung himself out of bed to deal with the unwanted guest. Keyword. Flung. The poor boy unintentionally threw himself into his wall, effectively imprinting his face in the plaster. What the hell? Naruto roared before he let out an impressive string of cusses, while Ghost merely laughed and held his side. Who wouldn't after seeing a 12-year-old throw himself into a wall face first? That, my friend, is what happens when you stick an overpowered teenager's mind into the body of a weak pre-adolescent. Ghost explained between breaths. Your mind commands like you're fully grown, but your body moves like a kid, so all the signals you give your muscles are overkill. That means that the first thing on your list of things to do is to get your motor functions working properly. Same goes for your chakra control. Your mind is used to manipulating more chakra than your current body is, so no Sage Mode and no Rasen Shuriken until we get you back to peak condition. Now, I don't know what your schedule is like, but I'm pretty sure that you have to go to the academy pretty soon. Go to class, but don't change anything yet. Tell Shikamaru to meet up after school at Ichiraku's, say you know a guy that wants to play against a good Shingai player or something. I'll see you there, right now I gotta rest. Screwing around with the fabric of time and space is pretty tiring. Naruto, regaining feeling in his face, sighed. He could tell this was going to be a long day and was kicking himself for not seeing something like this happening sooner. No muscle control, stuck again in a village that would like nothing more than for him to disappear, taking classes with people that he once called friends, now thinking he's a useless waste of space. Oh yeah, time travel kicks ass. At least by the end of the day, Shikamaru will remember. True, the guy will probably do absolutely nothing about most things, but at least Shika would treat him like a human being. Lazy bastard. After putting on his clothes and eating breakfast, endeavors which provided Ghost with an uncomfortable amount of entertainment, Naruto managed to leave his apartment for the academy, an hour and a half late. As soon as the door closed behind him, Ghost sighed. After making sure Naruto was out of hearing range, which was pretty much after the sounds of said blonde falling down the stairs outside stopped, he spoke up. Glad you chose not to show up in front of him. Kid has enough on his plate right now. Having a second god-level existence in his apartment might be overkill on his brain. Right in the middle of the kitchen, a pale spirit materialized out of thin air 3 feet above the ground. With a demonic face and beads in its hand, a native of this universe could easily identify the apparition as the Shinigami. The air itself became stagnant and damp, and the temperature dropped to almost freezing despite the fact that it was already in the upper 70s outside. You have tampered in realms you should not have, mortal. Yes, you're pissed that a crapton of souls disappeared from your realm, and a few of your special trophies from your overextending gut went missing. Big whoop. Ghost replied in a bored tone, not caring at all that he was insulting the god of death to his face. All you afterlife types are the same. Oh, look at me, I control the dead. I have first dibs on all souls, no questions asked. Worship the air I take place in. Worship it. Heavens forbid I try to make things easier for you by preventing Armageddon and controlling the flow of people dying for the next century so that you won't explode from the extra work. By the way, I'm only barely mortal in any definition of the term, thanks to Zuzushi, so my soul is pretty much untouchable. At this he raised his right arm a few feet from his face, and the abyss-like flame flared from it. Besides, it's not like I can't kick your ass if I needed to anyway. Ghost's little tirade while still lying down, as the lazy bastard hadn't moved a bit since Naruto woke up, shook the Shinigami up, if you consider shaken up stopping in midair, not growing at all, and a small twitch in its demonic face. At the mention of the name Zuzushi, the deity even stumbled back a few feet. Even if one is a god of death, being on a first-name basis with a being that put pretty much all physical creation into existence was essentially impossible. Knowing her name was one thing, to talk about her like an acquaintance, let alone receiving any sort of gift or blessing from her, was in another realm of imagination. He had heard of overconfident gods from other realms that had made the mistake of speaking of her familiarly, they tended to turn up missing by the end of the century. That fire the man was conjuring was nothing like Amaterasu's fire. Not even close. He could tell that it was something that should be avoided at any cost. Mortal, demon, god, nothing could be saved from this cursed inferno. He could tell that the person in front of him was human, but also that he was extremely powerful in a number of ways. In short, this being was not one to piss off. Ever. By anyone. Shaking his head to regain composure, something that any person or bitch would never claim to witness, the god of death continued, albeit a bit more carefully. Be that as it may, many souls will not come to existence due to your stunt. I demand compensation for such a travesty. Ghost laughed, I'm sorry, I thought you wanted a shot at finally getting that guy's soul. You would never get another chance to get your hands on the bastard the way things were going earlier, so I decided to press the reset button, for lack of a better term. If it makes you feel any better, I'll give you a couple hundred of my links in compensation for what I did as an I'm sorry gift, but that's it. As he spoke this last part, a coil of chain, despite being made of some sort of metal, quietly slithered out of the palm of his hand into a neat pile in front of the visiting god. Picking up one end of the chain, the Shinigami gasped. You're. Yes, I am. And I would appreciate it if word of me being here doesn't reach anyone's ears. The man interrupted sternly, which was out of his relaxed character, before calming down again and relaxing on the ground. If that is all the business you have, you may go. But before you do whatever the hell you omnipotent types do, tell me the foundation of the seal you put on the kid. Rumor has it that it's supposed to leak the furball's chakra into his system in small increments, but something seems kinda off to me. All the other Jinchuriki that I've seen or heard about had at least some control of what they were doing while using their tenant's power, and a couple had some nice secondary abilities. The ghost-like apparition nodded slowly before answering. Their concerns are well-founded. The seal is not supposed to leak chakra into the child system. It is supposed to filter the chakra into the boy. Unfortunately, both the mortal known as the fourth Hokage and, by association I, were pressed for time and were rushed when conducting the ritual. Haha, you suck. Ghost chuckled childishly. Quiet, you. The god of death chided before continuing. The result of our mistake was an inefficient filtering system that stopped working properly years ago, an error subtle enough that it can be easily overlooked by even the most experienced seal masters in this realm. The child would not have survived if it failed even a month earlier. Unexpectedly, as a result of his body adapting to the demonic taint in the unfiltered chakra, his already impressive reserves are several times larger than they were originally supposed to be. So for example, where a normal ninja his age would have 100 units of chakra, his chakra was supposed to be 250 units without the kickbee, due to his genetics and current lifestyle. But the working seal, it would be roughly 500 units of chakra, which is already quite high. But with his seal the way it is, his reserves are currently at 2000 units, if not higher, which would roughly be the level of an elite Chunin. Unfortunately, this long-term direct exposure to demonic chakra has had an adverse effect on his intelligence, which in turn affected his ability to control his chakra adequately. Ghost nodded in comprehension before motioning for the god to continue his explanation. His power, as you should have guessed by now, is his increased healing rate. However, it is nothing compared to what it should be. Its true potential is being restrained by the unfiltered taint in his system. Mere scratches should be healed in seconds, if not in a second. Poisons and chemicals of a similar nature would have little to no effect on his body. Broken limbs would be healed within hours, missing limbs would regenerate within days, and only the most grievous of mortal wounds would be able to kill the boy. The rate of healing would increase even further if he applied more chakra to the general area of the wound. Now, this power only truly activates when he is relying on the fox's chakra in large quantities, and even then the dense concentrations of corrupted chakra poison him, trading short-term healing for long-term cellular damage. In addition to that, with a fixed seal his eyesight and sense of smell might develop to better match the potency of its prisoner. As for why the chakra is so corrupted compared to the other beasts, I believe you already have some sort of idea. Ghost chuckled. Damn, I knew the kid had messed up luck in general, but this just is nuts. Even without a bloodline he still ends out on top, yet is cursed at the same time. I honestly think he might be related to me in some distant way. Anyone who wins and loses that badly at the same time has to be. The second the seal is set straight, the kid will be a powerhouse compared to the standard in this world. Change his clothing a little bit and give him a bit more social experience, and the lucky bastard will be picking up girls left and right. He paused before putting on a perverted grin. You just can't find women who do more kinky stuff than a kunoichi these days. I mean there was this one time a couple centuries ago where a few ninja chicks and I got together, snagged a shit ton of silk rope, a few knives, and… Stop. I don't want to know. The god shouted in a rather panicked tone. Ghost chuckled. If you can fix the seal, do as you wish. It does not concern me anymore. As for your tribute, I will accept it. Farewell, envoy of Zuzashi. It was interesting to finally meet the cursed memory in person. As the pale god faded from view, Ghost sighed and turned to his side and instantly fell asleep. At the Haika estate, Hinata woke up in her bed, sweating profusely. Most dreams, she could only remember bits and pieces, melting away like so many snowflakes. This time was different. What she could remember was that unlike most of her dreams about Naruto, which left her hot and sweaty, oh, the possibilities, this one was terrifying. Getting her dream journal out from under her bed, she turned to the last page, desperately trying to remember the few facts that remained in her head, and even more desperately trying not to read earlier submissions. Grabbing a pen, the heiress quickly jotted down what she remembered. Red clouds under a black sky surrounded a nine-tailed fox, ripping it out of its cage. The fox and the cage both were screaming in pain as an eye in the clouds laughed in victory before turning its attention to the moon. Suddenly, a black fire claimed all, and nothing remained as an infinite number of swords chained together danced in the abyss. Naruto was in this dream, but he was in danger for some reason. Can't remember why. This dream was different. Look into this later. Sighing, Hinata hid her book again between the mattresses of her bed. She had some special privacy seals that she had managed to copy from the clan storage building, set up on the four corners of the bed and the book, so that she wouldn't have to worry about someone from her family sneaking into her room and accidentally finding it, much less reading the pages. If word got out that the Haika heiress was having such detailed dreams, much less with a boy that everyone in the village seems to hate, she would get the caged bird seal slapped on her forehead in an hour. Heading into her usual attire, black skin-tight shorts that go down to her knees, a mesh wire shirt under a black t-shirt under a large tan baggy sweater, the young heiress sighed as she took in her mature figure for not the first time. The sweater she started to wear after she started to develop in the chest area, being very self-conscious about her physical appearance, and scared that if boys start to ask her out that she wouldn't have a chance at getting Naruto later. Not that being a princess in a family of people who did nothing but stare at everyone menacingly all day with intimidating eyes didn't deter enough boys as it is. The morning was the usual routine, despite the odd dream she initially had. Wake up, take shower, get dressed, eat breakfast and ignore the menacing glares from the main house and elders, walk to the main entrance while ignoring the depressing stares from the branch house, leave the compound of hell with her escort Kurenai, who had apparently just been promoted to Junin, and go to the academy. Hinata was still mulling over her nightmare in Naruto. The exams were the previous day and he had failed for a second time, barely producing a single zombie-like clone, let alone 3 functional ones. Even though he grinned like it was a joke afterwards and shrugged it off as a mere setback for the future Hokage, she could tell he was taking it hard. Hinata long ago discovered that her crush's happy-go-lucky attitude was merely a mask to hide his real emotions. The things a person can discover from stalking or observing, yeah, observing. There's nothing illegal about observing. On his way back home from the academy, when he thought no one was watching, Naruto dropped his mask. There were no tears. For as long as she could remember, Hinata had never seen him cry, but there was a sadness and depression in his eyes that could not be mistaken for anything else. Hinata could only watch as he continued his way back to his rundown apartment, not even bothering to go train his usual daily 5 hours in one of the abandoned training grounds. She did not want to intrude on one of his private moments, yet she cursed herself for not being strong enough to help him. Arriving at school, Hinata got to her place in the back of the classroom to avoid attention, being the first person there, aside from some random civilian students, cough cannon fodder cough, and Shino. Slowly, the classroom filled out. Sasuke took his seat by the window and assumed his I don't care about anything pose, while Shikamaru and Shinji came in soon after and sat next to each other a few rows down. Soon afterwards, Kiba came in, yelling almost as loudly as Naruto would. While Hinata liked Kiba as a friend and thought that his puppy Akamaru was cute, the Inuzuka went overboard with his confidence more often than not and got into too many people's faces too often. That and he recently seemed to hit puberty and noticed women existed and was often having trouble keeping his dog in check. It took 2 weeks for Hinata to get the idea through that she was not interested in the Inuzuka heir before he turned his sights on Ino. That courting attempt ended in 3 hours and an assault from the furious blonde and her group of friends. Poor fool had to spend the rest of the week recovering in the hospital from that incident and listening to his mother and sister chew him out about how to treat women. The room was almost full when said blonde and her pink-haired rival compatriot burst through the doors screaming at the top of their lungs about who got in first. Since Sasuke sat at the end of a row, there was only one chair next to him, so it became the prize of his official fangirl club every day for the leading member who got to class first. Yes, official. They have t-shirts, bi-weekly meetings and events, sign-in slips with their pictures on it, and the annual Sasuke Fantasy Story Contest. Of course, the only members who were recognized as the leaders were Sakura and Ino, as anyone else was too scared to try to go up against them, but that's beside the point. Hinata had mixed feelings about Sakura. On one hand, the pinkhead was loud, confident, smart and popular, yet she was never mean to Hinata and would sometimes chat with her. She knew of Hinata's crush on Naruto, yet never really said anything about it. This could be interpreted either way, but Hinata was willing to give Sakura the benefit of the doubt. On the other hand, the large four-headed bitch had the love of her crush and didn't really do anything about it aside from give him a concussion several times a day. Hinata was pretty sure that Naruto suffered some sort of brain damage after the years of constant beatings, which resulted in his inability to pass the exams. Once again, Hinata felt incompetent for the fact that she did nothing while Naruto took beating after beating and yet kept coming for more. Hinata was stewing in her guilt when Iruka and Mizuki stepped into the classroom. Naruto wasn't there. But Naruto, yep, he called it. So far, this day sucked. After falling down the stairs outside his apartment complex, Naruto struggled to get up with his short limbs and his more than shoddy sense of balance. After relearning how to walk, an endeavor that took over 20 minutes with a crowd of people watching him with uncomfortable looks on their faces, Naruto slowly made his way to the academy, taking steps that were way too big for someone his size. This resulted in several falls into alleyways and trash cans. By the time he actually made it to the classroom, he was over 3 hours late and smelled like a cross between a dirty diaper and compost, both of which, and more, he'd managed to roll around in by accident at one point that morning. Needless to say, he wasn't the only one in a sour mood when he walked in the classroom. Surprisingly enough, he was so pissed at that point that he didn't really care that Sasuke was in the classroom and not as evil as he was the last time Naruto saw him. Of course that was a given, with time traveling and all, but Naruto was more preoccupied with trying to move his body in an agreeable manner, smelling like a conglomerate of dead everything than marveled that his ex-teammate wasn't trying to kill him. The rest of the class didn't fare much better. Everyone stayed as far away as possible from the orange-clad loudmouth situated in the back row, who was surprisingly quiet for once. It took 30 minutes for Iruka, bless his naive heart, to finally lose his patience and throw Naruto into one of the gym showers with a bar of soap and tell him that he wasn't allowed back in the classroom until he and his clothes smelled remotely decent, which of course took another hour and a half to accomplish. By the time he got out, half the lunch period had passed. Naruto remembered that he didn't bring any food or money, and he couldn't find Shikamaru, not like he was trying to at this point. While this wasn't the first time such an event had happened to the blonde, it did nothing to help his mood, so he just fell towards one of the trees on the grounds and closed his eyes before he killed someone, Mizuki. By the time lunch was over, Naruto's mood had slightly improved. Not smelling like multiple versions of death anymore, and a decent nap can do that to a person. He was still hungry though. Waddling into the classroom again, he finally got a good look around the classroom and thought somewhat clearly about his current situation. In this point in time, Sakura, Ino and Sasuke wouldn't give him the right time of day even if he tried to be polite, which made him slightly wince in emotional pain. Shino would think something was wrong the second Naruto tried to strike up a conversation with him and would try to figure out why since the two never really hung out much, even in the future. That would probably change something too early for Naruto's comfort. Looking around, he spotted Kiba. Dog breath was alright, but he was too loud and annoying to deal with at the moment. Plus, the mutt-sensitive nose probably still smells some diaper residue on his jumpsuit, so interaction with the Inuzuka is currently on hold until further notice. A row below the dog lover was the day's target and his far significantly larger friend. Thinking about it now, Naruto realized that the Nara and the Akimichi weren't all that bad during childhood. Even before he started to evolve into the awesome ninja that he will be, Shikamaru and Shimjai never really gave him that much crap about something, unless he deserved it, and even then it wasn't really that bad. Hell, the two occasionally provided a distraction when he was running from Samanbu after a major prank. He occasionally tried to get them to help him in one of his works of art. Somewhere in Iowa, a blonde missing nin sneezed from several places, causing the hotel that he was in to explode violently, but the two always would decline and get back to watching clouds. Snapping out of his stupor, Naruto realized that almost all the seats were gone, minus some in the back row. A few of the chairs still smelled from being around Naruto so long. The only chairs that were safe were the two in the back right corner. Situated in one was of course, Hinata. Naruto's relationship with Hinata had taken its first few steps after the fight with Pain. To be perfectly honest, the Jinchuriki was not taking things well with Danzum as Hokage and Sasuke being Sasuke. He had been restricted to staying inside the village, which meant that the only missions he could do were D ranks and some very rare C ranks that dealt with some reasonably classified information. Hinata pretty much became his anchor to reality and stability as soon as their relationship finally got off the ground, which was to say after their first date at the recently remade Ichiraku's. Due to his newfound status as the village hero, gaining permission from the Haikyuu elders to court Hinata was only slightly less difficult than trying to keep Tsunade from her morning booze. Painful and extremely dangerous, but definitely doable. While their relationship in that time did not get that far, due to the chaos that was pretty much happening 24/7, their trust and love for each other grew to, in many eyes, uncomfortable levels. Starting from square one again with Hinata was pretty much the worst thing for Naruto, but he remembered what Ghost said about Hinata and reluctantly agreed. Showing any sort of real interest in the Haikyuu heiress in public right now would screw everything up and would result in an unnecessary amount of suffering and stress for the both of them. Hinata had told him in the future about how the elders and her father would demean her and often threaten her with the caged bird seal if she did not improve. It was only after Naruto beat her cousin Neji in the Chunin exams that her father started to lighten up on her and teach her effectively, as well as protect her somewhat from the other elders, and even then it was difficult to deal with the overall situation at times. Because of that, and being her inspiration for improving herself, Hinata told him she felt like she'd won the lottery. Seeing her suffer, and actually knowing she was suffering this time around, was going to be too much for him to bear had Naruto not remembered what Ghost said earlier. Hell, I'll even make it so that you get that Haikyuu chick and not get in trouble with the councils for it. Girl has a figure to kill for, and it was obvious that she has the hots for you. Ignoring that side comment, Naruto had to put faith into Ghost. The guy already turned back time for him, how much harder was it for the guy to get his girlfriend back? As he sat himself next to Hinata, he turned to her and smiled. A real smile. Hinata in turn did a wonderful imitation of a tomato and proceeded to pass out. The blonde chuckled to himself before telling Iruka that Hinata had fainted for no reason at all. Maybe this time around, things wouldn't be as bad as he thought. Back in Naruto's apartment, Ghost groaned as he picked himself off of the floor and rubbed the sides of his head before going over everything he knew about the new world he was visiting in his head. Even gods make mistakes. NGH. Fixing a filter seal, okay, no problem. That's easy for my level of sealing with my other skills. The kid is seriously lucky that the Shinigami was the one that made his seal, otherwise I would have had to get Scab or Crypt here to look at him in order to fix it, and I seriously doubt that them being here so early would make things easier for any of us. Seeing as he has more chakra than he originally was supposed to, I suppose I can make it filter more chakra than it is now to compensate a little bit. That's easy. As for dealing with the missing half of the furball and giving the kid a few additional foxy features, that's Crypt's job. After that, Blondie can be introduced to the training called Stay Away from the Midget, heh. Ghost then sighed, no way I'm good enough to deal with that level of sealing, though. Harnessing and fusing energy and genetic material from an incomplete spiritual holy class deity to a human container. That's level 8 stuff at least. No way am I touching that. Looking at the nearby clock that Naruto had more than likely chucked against the wall several times, Ghost saw it was an hour till it was time to meet Naruto at Ichiraku's. Getting up and walking to the door, Ghost could only chuckle to himself. It's almost time. He opened the door and basked in the sunlight. As he did so, his elongated image on the floor took the form of a reptile-like being with bone wings. May the game of shadows begin. Hinata was confused. Happy, but very confused. Naruto came to school late that day, which wasn't much of a surprise. He did just fail the exams the previous day, nothing odd about that. He smelled like trash. Not exactly normal, but since he was the village prankster, it could be simply explained as a joke gone wrong. This could also explain why he was rather quiet throughout the day. Perfectly understandable. It was the other, more subtle things about her crush that were bothering her. First of all, Naruto did not attempt to talk, woo, or make any physical gesture to Sakura Haruno. For as long as she could remember, Naruto would at least try to do something regarding the pink head at least once a day, even on his worst days. Another thing that was off. He was moving oddly. While most people would assume it was another one of his bad jokes or that he had hurt himself preparing one of said pranks, Hinata could see a peculiar pattern to his movements. It was if his body's muscles were naturally trying to move in larger movements than what they were used to. Muscle memory on such a scale couldn't be faked or adjusted in a single day. Without shadow clones, anyway. But she didn't know that. The last and probably most important thing that got to Hinata was Naruto's eyes. While Hinata was not as experienced as the rest of the main branch, or Niji, at reading facial expressions, years of observing Naruto had given her a fair understanding of what was going through his head at most times. Through his eyes in particular, his blue, deep, mysterious, dreamy, you get the idea. The point was, Naruto's eyes were different in Hinata's perspective, which is from the Byakugan, of course. She can't really stare directly into his eyes often and not get caught without it. Previously Naruto's eyes were a deep azure blue, like the ocean. Constantly shifting, uncontrollable, wild with ever-changing emotions, and occasionally giving off a few extra hues of blue like an overabundance of life and hope. Now his eyes were an even more impressive gem blue. Sharp, clear, deeper in insight, but with that same soft glimmer of warmth that would come out of it. They were the eyes of experience, of someone who has seen and gone through countless events that completely change one's view of the world. The eyes of someone who knew what his goal was and the route to take. The eyes of a veteran. The eyes of an adult. The eyes of a ninja. Yet Naruto didn't really act all that different that day. Though not as loud as normal, he still fell asleep in class and still talked back to Iruka in his usual manner. His claims to become the best ninja the village has ever seen seemed to be absent, but his vow to become Hokage still passed through his lips in abundance. All in the half an hour he was in the classroom before Iruka literally picked up the orange-clad loudmouth and threw him into the showers. The girl had half a mind to excuse herself to the bathroom and do some research, but she stomped on that idea. She would more than likely forget to come back to class if she did and get caught. Naruto didn't appear again until the middle of lunch. It was odd that even though his clearly bad mood was made worse with the lack of food, he didn't really make much noise about it. He simply waddled over to a nearby tree and fell asleep. Hinata simply didn't know what was happening. Having finished her lunch a few minutes before, she hid behind another tree a few meters away and watched intently to see if she could find any other clues that might explain the boy's odd behavior. As class was starting again, Hinata witnessed a new anomaly in her crush, through her Byakugan of course. Naruto didn't immediately try to get a seat next to Sakura, nor did he try to get a seat next to his rival Sasuke. He simply stood at the top of the classroom in the back for the last few minutes and stared at some of his classmates. What surprised the heiress was that when she tried to read his emotions, she found that it was significantly harder to get an accurate reading than it was yesterday. She could still make out general ideas, but it was like Naruto had learned overnight how to hide what he was truly thinking from onlookers, which was impossible. It took years to learn how to effectively hide one's emotions facially, and yet Naruto was applying a somewhat straight face, which in his case was a tired but cocky grin, and letting little past that. Hinata was too focused on trying to decipher his emotions to be able to tell who he was looking at, but she was pretty sure she saw some regret and remorse, along with a bit of irritation soon after. A few unreadable emotions came next before a multitude of emotions flashed on his face at once. Hinata was perplexed. Who or what could possibly cause Naruto to have so many emotions at once? Then she realized that he was staring and walking right towards her. Trying her hardest not to pass out, Hinata quickly turned off her jutsu before anyone noticed. This had never happened before. The boy almost never noticed her presence unless she was the only person around at the time, and when he did he just brushed her off as dark or weird before running off to pull some prank or woo Sakura. Every step he took threatened to force the girl to pass out due to her skyrocketing insecurities. As her dream boy took a seat, she slowly turned her head to at least acknowledge his presence. She knew that that was really all he truly wanted in life. It was all she really wanted too. That is when he did the thing that surprised her the most, the thing that told her that something had happened to Naruto. He smiled at her. Not one of his forced, "I'm here and I'm blocking out everything else" loud smiles. One of his real smiles. One that she'd seen a couple of times as a child when he thought he was alone. The one that sparked her infatuation with him. The one that had been showing less and less over the years at the academy till it was almost never seen. And he was smiling while looking right at her. Hinata promptly and gracefully blacked out. Several hours later, it was the end of the day and Naruto had to make his move. After Hinata passed out, she was sent to the nurse's office, so Naruto simply waited through the class. He of course knew that she'd react like that, but couldn't help it. The girl was cute as hell when she froze up like that just for him. The poor boy made it 15 minutes before he fell asleep on the desk. It didn't help that the subject of that particular lecture was based around an extremely boring version of summoning theory and the various species related to it. Honestly, he didn't even know half the stuff Iruka was spewing out about the principles of the seals and the history of various summons, and he was more than sure that he never needed to know them either when he had to fight Shikakura Pain. To be honest, he doubted that Jiraiya knew a lot of this crap either. It was mostly just summon and ask for a favor, or summon and be surrounded by the organs of some boss-sized toad with a perverted toad sage, and both worked pretty well for him so far. Needless to say the entire class was surprised when, after Iruka nearly gave Naruto a concussion with a thrown piece of chalk, Naruto correctly listed 5 different summoning contracts and the theory behind summoning different members of a species without a second's hesitation. Albeit he did have a bit of a slur for a few minutes. "Naruto, how do you know that there's a chameleon or bee summoning contract? The 3 summoning species of the Sannin are common knowledge, but I would assume that you would think of the monkey and dog, or at least the salamander contracts before those 2. Not only that, but those 2 contracts in particular haven't been mentioned at all in my lectures. I'm not even sure that most Chunin could list 5 species that quickly, let alone know how summoning theory works in such detail." Luckily, Naruto was always pretty good at thinking on his feet and managed to spew some bull excuse of being curious about summoning giant minions to do his bidding and/or chores and decided to look it up one day. On a particular mountain, Gamabunta suddenly developed an urge to crush loud blonde human children. He quickly shrugged off this feeling and decided to go the Grand Elder for some therapy. This would prove to be a mistake and result in a large distaste in the Toad boss for narcoleptics everywhere. The rest of the day for Naruto was less eventful. Knowing to toe the line, Naruto decided to answer all of the questions Iruka asked him for the rest of the day in incomplete and fragmented stutters or the ever-popular "I don't know" sound and shrug. This continued until the end of class. Naruto decided to make his move as everyone got up to go home. "Hey Shikamaru. Wait up. I wanna ask you something." Naruto shouted from across the room, not caring that he was attracting attention to himself. It wasn't like he could simply walk up to the boy with his shot muscle control, anyway. Shikamaru turned around lazily and stared at the boy with a tired expression. "Hey. What is it, Naruto? If it's another one of your troublesome pranks." Naruto laughed and scratched the back of his head in usual fashion. For some reason, it was one of the few gestures he could get down regardless of his body transfer. No, not today anyways, although I do have some true beauties in the planning stages for later if you're interested. What I wanted to ask is if you wanted to meet a new friend of mine. I was telling him about the people in my class and he took notice of your name. He seems interested in playing Shingai against Inara, whatever that means. Got real jumpy about it too. He really wanted to play against you. You interested?" Shikamaru was taking in Naruto's story and was thinking about what would happen. He knew something was up with the blonde, that much was clear. His list of mental notes was nowhere near as long as Hinata's, but that was to be expected when comparing against a stalker and her interest. Naruto seemed to be telling the truth at the moment. A bit over the top sure, but there wasn't any ill intent coming from Naruto. Plus, Shungai was Shungai, and he wasn't going to turn down a challenge. Sighing to himself the boy shrugged. Sure, Naruto. It seems interesting. Shungai has training today with his dad, and it's not like I'm going to do anything else. Naruto mentally sighed in relief. If things continued to go as smoothly as they currently were, a lot more people would be saved from unnecessary pain and anguish once the fighting was over. Great. I told him we would meet him at Ichiraku's after school. Come on. Grabbing the lazy shadow user's hand, Naruto ran outside the classroom, only to trip and fling himself and Shikamaru down the hallway, forgetting that his motor functions were shot at the moment. The two skidded down the hall headfirst for a fair distance. How about we just walk there? Shikamaru groaned, picking himself off the floor. Was the muffled response from Naruto, whose face was currently implanted in the wall. With Ghost, finding the raiment stand proved to be quite an endeavor for the foreign powerhouse. Sure, he could casually screw around with the fabric of time and space. Fighting gods. Give Ghost a time and date and he will be there, ready and giggling like a mad little schoolgirl in anticipation. Ask him to find a small food stand in the middle of a city, with no clue where it is except the name. Well, the man will find the place eventually, but odds are he'll have a Kakashi-grade excuse for his tardiness when he finally arrives. And unlike the silver-haired Junin, Ghost stories would most likely be true much to the poor man's misfortune. Sometimes it just doesn't pay to be a cocky jackass, especially if it pisses off deities that control the luck in the multiverse. Arriving a little over an hour late, Ghost walked up to see a very pissed-off Naruto and a very irritated Shikamaru waiting at the raiment stand. Unknown to Ghost, the two boys only got there 15 minutes earlier, mostly due to Naruto's slow land speed and more than frequent spills. This would explain why Naruto and to a lesser extent Shikamaru were both covered with scratches and dirt. 15 minutes was still plenty of time for Naruto to down at least 4 bowls of miso ramen, even with horrible muscle control. Yo. Sorry I'm late, Naruto's eyes flashed dangerously as he glared at the man. If you even try to do what I think you are going to do, I will make you suffer in ways that you only thought were possible in bad nightmares in half-assed fanfiction. Shikamaru looked at Naruto in confusion, while Ghost merely sweat dropped and chuckled nervously. Well then, I'm glad I have a good excuse then. I was going to say that I'm still new in town and that I got lost trying to find the place. The slightly unnerved man turned to the pineapple-headed boy, you must be Shikamaru Nara. I've heard that your family is well known for producing master strategists and are almost unbeatable when it comes to strategy games. When Naruto here told me a member of your family was in his class, I couldn't help but ask for him to introduce us. Ghost then bowed in the direction of the lazy genius. I hope you'll give me a good game. Taking a seat next to Naruto, Ghost faced the waitress AM and smiled. But before we go, I haven't eaten anything all day. Excuse me. May I have a beef ramen please? As the newcomer waited for his order, Shikamaru took the man in and was trying to connect the few dots that he found. The stranger was clearly a foreigner, he pretty much said it himself. His clothes, posture, and way of speaking were all different compared to the average civilian in the elemental countries. The man's eyes couldn't be seen through his tinted sunglasses, and the lenses were designed to wrap around to prevent anyone from seeing his eyes from the side as well. That didn't earn points in Shikamaru's book. The fact that the genius had never seen such a man before in town, yet he'd known a relatively obscure fact about his family, also started to sound alarms. Whoever this guy was, he was definitely troublesome. Oh yeah. Beef ramen. Come to Papa. Ghost was having a mini parade over salted broth, noodles and meat, complete with confetti and rather impressive dancing that snapped Shikamaru out of his thinking. He's a good dancer. I'll give him that much. Right before he took his first bite though, Ghost stopped. Naruto immediately heard a voice softly echoing through the air. Since no one else seemed to react to it, he was pretty sure that he was the only one who could hear it. You know, this won't be my first bowl. This probably would be a good time to give him a link. Ghost then took his first bite of the ramen and started to cry. So delicious. Gulp. Slurp. Food of divine salvation. Naruto, not wasting any time, turned to his right forearm where he could feel his 5 links. Focusing on bringing one out was surprisingly easy. Naruto assumed correctly that it was due to his sage training that he could focus so clearly and efficiently even when dealing with new foreign energies. He watched as the black chain link, slightly larger than the palm of his hand, melted out of his skin as if it was water. He did all this with his back turned to his friend of course. Turning to Shikamaru, he held up the link. Hey Shika, you wanna see a cool trick while we wait for the jerk back there to finish? Boy. Ghost grumbled with his mouth full of noodles. Sure. As long as it isn't troublesome and won't start anything then sure. Naruto put on his fox grin, hiding his nervousness of what he was going to do and hoping it actually worked. Sweet. Okay, first what you have to do is take this chain link and press it against your forehead. Then wait as I get the rest of the trick started. Holding the chain link and sighing to himself, Shikamaru didn't notice the slight spark the chain link gave off as it touched his forehead. The link didn't stop at his skin, but phased through his flesh and disappeared into his skull, leaving no trace. Then came the headache. It felt like someone had stuck a helium tube inside his skull and turned on the gas real slow, giving his entire head an equal and steadily rising pressure. Not completely unbearable, but with the flashes of memories and experiences flowing into his head at a high speed, the headache was quickly causing the 12-year-old to lose coordination of his body. Breathing heavily, Shikamaru attempted to stumble backwards from his chair and escape whatever he'd just gotten himself into. Naruto, however, somehow managed to hold onto his friend and whispered into his ear. It will last for about an hour. Then you'll remember everything. Throughout the entire episode, Ghost was weeping tears of joy as he ate 2 more bowls of beef ramen, completely ignoring the pair of preteens next to him struggling with their own particular goals. 1 hour and 2 minutes later Shikamaru had calmed down. While he was struggling occasionally, Ghost could tell the boy was collecting his thoughts on his current situation regarding when and where he was. Currently though, he was pinned on the ground by Naruto for the last 10 minutes, struggling to get back up with onlookers and Ghost, staring in disgust and/or amusement. Hey, how often do you see 2 kids wrestling on the ground in public with no adult supervision these days? Sighing, the Nara turned his head to look at the blonde. You can get off me now, Naruto. I remember everything. Heading off his regained comrade, Naruto sheepishly grinning, scratched the back of his head. Sorry I had to be so rough, Shika. You would have gotten away if I didn't. Well, if you two just wanted to be alone, I could postpone this meeting for later. Ghost grinned, easily exploiting the play on words for his own cheap amusement. Shikamaru glared at the man with an intense and extremely analytical eye. Shut up, you troublesome bastard. Let's just go to somewhere private so you can tell me what the hell is going on. TCH, I need a smoke. Ghost shrugged as he got up from his stool and placed some money on the counter. Where he got said money in the first place remained a mystery. Yeah. Follow me. We're going to one of the training grounds I found earlier. I'll be able to tell if anyone is there coming a long time before they actually notice our presence, so we won't worry about anyone spying on us. Ghost walked off towards the training grounds, closely followed by the 2 teens and tweens' bodies. They were about halfway there when Naruto spoke up. Hey Shika. Yeah? The Nara replied with a raised eyebrow. Naruto looked at Shikamaru's legs as he traveled. How are you walking so normally? The genius blinked in a confused manner. What are you talking about, Naruto? Aren't you having trouble controlling your body the way you want to? The blonde asked in a slightly frustrated tone. The pineapple-headed boy blinked before connecting the dots. Is that the reason why you've been moving so awkwardly today? Ghost turned around and looked like he had forgotten something trivial. Oh. Sorry about that. I forgot to tell you, Naruto. Because your mind went directly from your older body to your younger one, you are the only one that actually has to regain control of your muscles. Everyone else is simply remembering all their experiences through their younger bodies in a more gradual process, so their muscle memory doesn't get shot like yours. It's like their younger minds are fused with their older ones when the link is applied, well your mind stayed the same, but your body got changed. Sucks, doesn't it? The thoughts going through Naruto's mind at that moment are not allowed to be revealed to the public. All that will be known is that the Kikbi inside of him was laughing his furry ass off for a long time after said incident. This would be the first in a very long line of incidents that Naruto would declare revenge on Ghost for. At the training grounds. Arriving at training grounds 21, a heavily forested area with a few small open fields, the 3 sat on the ground. By the time they got there, the sun had already set due to the slow pace they had to maintain for Naruto. So I'm assuming you have something to do with those swords and chains coming out of nowhere and toasting everything, as well as us being kids again. Shikamaru started off, speaking to Ghost. It wasn't a question. Ghost nodded. How did you figure that out? Naruto asked, wanting to know how Shikamaru pieced everything together so quickly and secretly studying the genius's analytical skills for future reference. Naruto had long ago realized that the Nara's ability to think ahead was something he had to at least try to mimic decently. He didn't need to plan 200 moves ahead, 25 moves would be enough, more or less. Naruto, it isn't that difficult. The pineapple-headed boy moaned. The last thing I remember before everything literally went black was black chains erupting from thin air and spreading out everywhere, turning into these troublesome-looking swords, then burning everything to Kingdom Come. You, Shikamaru pointed at an amused Ghost, I don't remember seeing before. I would have easily recalled someone dressed as strangely as you. Once I had my head on straight, I immediately connected the black chains from before to the one that you made me press against my head. Naruto may be unpredictable, but even I don't think he could pull something like this off, let alone in the situation that he was in. Considering that you were here when this troublesome blonde gave me the link, I came to the conclusion that you and the Black Chain must be related, and hence you are responsible for our current situation. Naruto nodded sagely while the others stared at him. So? Shikamaru started. You two can start off by telling me how we got into this troublesome mess. Well, since you ask so nicely, started Ghost. Ghost and Naruto then proceeded to fill in Shikamaru on what happened, although Ghost was a bit more colorful in his descriptions of how he wound up in Naruto's head in the first place. Needless to say, the two would be very careful when dealing with any member of their new allies' family. Ghost did not, however, tell them exactly what he did to the time stream, what his powers were specifically, how he knew so much about their world, or about his run-in with the mildly irritated god of death. When questioned about why he wouldn't fess up, Ghost merely responded that he would tell them when enough people were brought back, as it was a long explanation, and he didn't like saying things over and over again. So what now? Naruto asked. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is have a little chat with the furball. I have some questions that need to be answered, and he can answer at least a few. And if he doesn't, I'll just make him. Ghost answered simply. The two boys stared at the man as if he was mentally retarded by the end of the explanation. You know, the Kyuubi is several hundred feet tall, made of pure chakra, and can cause natural disasters with a mere thought, right? Shikamaru asked, skeptically. Yes. The long-haired man said casually. And that he has an ego the size of all the sticks up the Haika's asses put together, right? Naruto continued. And your point is? The smiling man asked. Troublesome. The Nara groaned, slapping himself in the face. Ghost stood up and brushed his coat with his hands. If you two are done playing 20 questions, then we can get started. Talking to the fox isn't only one thing I've planned on doing tonight, and I would like to get some sleep by the time morning comes. Naruto, pull up your shirt and focus your chakra so I can see your seal. I gotta have physical contact with the seal in order for me to reach the overgrown rabid woodland critter. Naruto reluctantly pulled up his shirt, muttering something about weirdos always touching his stomach. Ghost pressed his palm on the seal as Shikamaru watched intently. Hokage's office. Little did Naruto and Shikamaru know that their entire meeting was being carefully analyzed by the third Hokage via his crystal ball. The third was watching the group intently ever since he'd received reports of an oddly dressed stranger inside the village that no one had seen before, asking for the location of a particular raiment stand. There were no reports of such a man entering through the gates, it was as if he'd appeared out of nowhere that afternoon. He worried that the man was a spy, or worse, that he was after Naruto and knew about the boy and his many secrets. Which was, of course, true in an odd way. What Sarutobi didn't expect was for the man to be close to Naruto. The two interacted in a way that he himself had not seen the boy behave often, which disturbed him greatly. Though the man was a good dancer, the old monkey still watched with a careful eye. Then when Naruto pressed something against the young Nara's forehead, Sarutobi knew that something was up. He saw how the stranger paused before his first bite and how Naruto acted right afterward, pulling that thing out of his right hand like magic. He would have sent Anbu to the raiment store immediately if he didn't lip-read Naruto's message while he was holding his classmate down. Impatiently waiting to see what would happen, the third was not disappointed. As soon as the Nara boy got back up, the old man could see that something was different. While the boy's posture, speaking habits, and behavior had remained the same, his movements and the way his eyes fluttered around revealed a major change. It was like the boy had suddenly mentally grew several years and gained the experience of 100 battles. He had the eyes of a highly experienced ninja. The old man resigned himself to just watch after that and try to learn as much as possible. Needless to say that he nearly had a heart attack several times as he learned more. Time travel. Older bodies. Akatsuki. Black chains and fire. Bad booze. The list went on. When the man declared that he was going to talk to the Kyuubi itself, the third thought that his vision and hearing were going for a good while. How could a person treat such a monster with such indifference? With his fingers hovering above the button that alerted all of his Anbu, Sarutobi watched and waited as the man placed his hand on Naruto's stomach. Back in the training grounds, a good 10 minutes passed and nothing happened. Naruto seemed somewhat annoyed that someone was pretty much rubbing his stomach like a Buddha statue for an extended period of time, and Shikamaru was in his assumed meditating position, analyzing everything that had happened and was happening for the 100th time. Ghost was for all intents and purposes not moving. The man was perfectly still, his body betraying no notion that the outside world existed, and his glasses prevented anyone from seeing any eye movements. Suddenly, without any warning, Ghost retracted his hand halfway to his body. Well, that was interesting, the coated man muttered, flexing his hand. Did you get the answers you were looking for? Shikamaru asked. Some, Ghost replied with a shrug. I found out some other interesting things as well. I'll let you guys know when the time is right. For now, we have to do the next thing on our list. What would that be? Naruto asked curiously. Ghost simply grinned confidently, first at Naruto, then at Shikamaru, then straight into the middle of the air, where his grin grew even wider, straight into the face of Sarutobi. The old man could only gape at his glass ball. He knew I was watching the entire time. How? The next thing on tonight's agenda, Naruto Ghost turned back to the blonde, as fixing your seal. Thanks for watching guys, I hope did you enjoyed this. If you do please leave a like, share and subscribe for more, so take care and bye.